Thanks, Lauren. Hi, my name is Angana. Like Lauren, I am a product lead as well, and I work with advertisers to make their user experiences better. Right? And some of the things that I'm going to share today are based on my learnings that I have come across while working. Some of the things are not new. They are not path-breaking. But, a repetition doesn't hurt, right? And so what are we going to talk about? It must be really apparent from, the title of my presentation, right? Yeah? No? Okay. No, clearly not. So I'll tell you this. I studied science in school. But what I really wanted to study was literature, psychology, and art, right? Studied none of them. But in my current job, I get to use that. So what I try and do is look at the user experience from the lens of how a user thinks, right? So my presentation today is going to take a lot of the strategies that you've already heard throughout the day, and I'm going to try and tell you why users think the way they do, right? So basically, my presentation is about how do you create mindful experiences for users by keeping how the user mind works, okay? So let's get straight into it. Okay. Wow, what happened? Sorry. Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay. First impressions matter. This one was not a good one, but whatever. We'll move past that. So the first impressions matter. Why? Why does it matter, right? Let's understand why. But how much time do you think a user takes after they land on a website to form an opinion or a first impression about the website? Wild guess. 3 seconds? Okay. Yes. It's even before you blink your eye. I mean, we are fast and we are smart. Okay. So it's just 0.5 seconds. Now, interestingly, there are certain elements that a user focuses on when they first land on your page to make that decision, right? How much time do you think that takes? That's a little closer to your answer, 2.6 seconds. So that's basically the window that you have to influence the user to get to stay on your page and engage with you, right? But now that we know that users require a very, very good experience when they first land on the page, what are those elements that this is influenced by? We did a research, like we do for everything, and we saw that a staggering 94% of the factors on the page that influenced that first very important impression was related to design. This is a staggering stats, right? So what does it mean? I mean, this is a little complex. So all of us have been in the company of like really beautiful men and women, right? Like people who are hot, yeah, basically. So, and you will agree that if somebody is hot, you do tend to give them a little bit of a leeway, right? Rhonda is such a handful, but oh my God, she's hot. So what's the problem? Yeah. Let's just go with her, Like that. Not to sound, condescending, but that's the way it is, And it's not different for websites either. And this is backed by research. We've seen that if you are able to create a very good positive impression, first time the user lands, the user kind of gives you a little leeway. Even if your website doesn't have the optimal user experience, they are willing to let a few slips by and few hiccups just to stick with you because they liked you at first sight. Yeah. So that's a very, very important insight to keep, right? Clearly, our mind works in a very, very rational way, right? Not, yeah? So now we know that it takes only milliseconds to form an opinion about your website. Number 2, we know now that design is really, really important. And third, but what does it constitute? What are those 2 elements that actually influence design? 2 things. One is visual complexity. The second is prototypicality. Now, visual complexity is easy to understand. It's quite apparent. It's like how cluttered or how clear your page is, right? Prototypicality is not very apparent. What this means is your website should represent the category that it resides in. I'll repeat that. It means basically an e-commerce website should look like an e-commerce website, should feel like one. It shouldn't feel like a lead gen website or a blog or anything like that. That's because users like familiarity. They have a very fixed understanding of what, because most of the time the users spend is on other websites. So they basically have an understanding that this is how the website should look like. And if you try to do something very unconventional, sometimes it may take the user a lot of time to get used to it, or it may lead to a bad user experience. Which brings me to the 6 elements that you should keep in mind that actually influence the users to make that first impression, right? There are 6 things. And this is validated by the research that we see where we know that users read in an F format. They start on the left, go on the right, come back on the left, and come down. Now, this is exactly what they do. So this is a screenshot from Home Depot. And I see that you see that the first thing that the user notices is the brand logo, followed by the menu, then the search box, main content, main image, and finally the bottom of the page. Quite intuitive, right? But what is important to note is users spend about 6 seconds within the brand logo and the search box and the menu. That's a lot of time, which means the user first needs to feel confident that the website that they have landed on is legit. We'll give them all the information that they need, and then they move on, right? So, and this actually gives you a very good idea of what to load when you're loading your website. The speed aspect, right? Very important. So now, instead of making the user wait for 5 seconds before you show him anything, you can start sequentially loading the asset that I just spoke about. The first things first, so the user gets what it needs, and the trailer actually keeps him interested in what the movie is going to come about, right? So the key takeaway is that here, that we want to highlight is, first impressions are very important. And you need to make sure that you create a first impression so that users stay on and engage with you. Which brings me to my second insight. And you can clearly see that I'm a J.R.R. Tolkien fan, so I thought I'd use this. But when you think about it, creativity and rules kind of are at odds, right? When artists create, they said, I don't want to like following rules. But then conventions do have their advantages, right? So, and we have seen in research that consistency is one of the most strongest contributors to usability. So we can see it. So let's see how that actually works out in practice. Here's an example. This is a website that sells cameras and lenses and glasses. I think this is right. Yeah, on the right-hand side, you will see the menu that calls out the kind of glasses they have. Some of the, because you can't read it, I'll read it out for you. Some of the menu options are pancake, long-term, nifty 50. I have no idea what they mean. I will totally bounce off and go to Google and go somewhere else, right? On the other hand, the same website, they have another menu where you're shopping for lenses. And the menu options have wide angle, telephoto lenses. All of us know that. Which one do you think has a higher conversion rate? Yes, exactly. I mean, much, much higher conversion rate because users know what they're reading. They understand that what they see, and they just, click on it. It's just jargon-free. It's so much easier, right? The next thing is, so does that actually mean that, you should not be creative or experimental and just stick to standards and be consistent? That actually doesn't mean that. It means that there are enough and more examples out there where people have taken something standard and something consistent and pushed the boundaries. That's where creativity comes in. And I like to give the example of Lemonade Insurance, time and again. What Lemonade has done is it's taken a very staid product, right? Insurance, not the most expensive, not the most interesting product, and a form-filling process, which everybody hates, and tried and made it a lot more interesting. Mind you, they use all the different standard industry practices. They're consistent, but their form-filling experience is great. So what they do is, they have Maya, who's the advisor, who pretty much hands-holds you through the process. And by the way, Maya actually exists in person. There's actually a Maya at Lemonade. And what they do is they also use auto-suggestions beautifully. This is a standard practice that a lot of firms use. They use disclaimers beautifully. They actually try and anticipate what questions users will ask when they're on a form and try and give you answers before they even ask them. That's very intuitive, right? Then they're looking at data validation. I am not born in 1895, clearly, and Lemonade knows it. So, and finally, they actually let you see the progress that they're doing or making or data they are crunching while you wait. And their end screen, where they break down the renter's insurance, it's a very complicated product, so they break it down for you, is beautiful. It's very easy and it's extremely transparent. So, and if you're interested, if there are data geeks out there who like doing a lot of research, there's a technique called the Zoltman metaphor elicitation technique. I had to memorize this, yeah. Where you can actually, if you're doing qualitative research, you can use that technique to figure out how can you create great first impressions without going overboard, or basically within your brand guidelines. It's very, very interesting. It's there out there. Just Google it, yeah? Okay, so the key takeaway here, number one, you should be experimental. You should want to innovate, and you want to push the boundaries. But be consistent and know the standards, because before you can bend the rules, you must know them, right? Which brings me to the third one, and this is talking about likes and dislikes. This is something that all of us should do on a regular basis, but none of us do, because, and that is think. The reason is because it's not because we don't want to, it's because we're too distracted, right? And think of it this way. When you are on your mobile device, you are even more distracted than you are when you're sitting in front of a laptop, right? Because you're moving around, there are probably multiple screens in front of you, whatever it is. So when you're designing for mobile, it is even more important, A, to make sure that your content is great. We'll talk about that tomorrow in a few sessions. And also, how do you load the content? How does it make the user feel? So what this comes down to is something called cognitive load. Okay, so this is like psychology, a little bit geeky. But what essentially this means is cognitive load is the amount of information that a user needs to process to be able to do a task, okay? So it's the amount of pressure that you put on the user. Say, please understand this before you can do this. Now, the idea of a good design is to make sure that the cognitive load of the user is actually the least. So think of it this way. Design a user experience for the inattentive, for somebody who's not paying attention, who's probably just going to give you half your attention. So you should design a user experience where you can order, let's say, a pizza while listening to music, walking your dog, and your baby together. Like we're multitasking all the time, right? Don't do that. I wouldn't recommend doing that. but just in case. So, and let's examine, how do you do that? I mean, I'm just saying a lot of theory, so how do you put that into practice? My husband's an avid reader, so he reads on the Kindle, and he uses it, we are a very, very varied household. Okay, so I use playbooks, he uses Kindle. So Kindle has this amazing feature where you can log in from any device, any browser, and the moment you log in, it will tell you that, Abhijit, this is where you left off the last time, would you like to start again? That is the level of personalization that they can allow. Playbooks also does this beautifully. I discovered a lot of new great content because of the algorithm that they have. So personalization is one of the things that helps users converse with you better. I have family back in India, so I keep sending them flowers all the time. I use this small little website called Ferns and Petals, which is an Indian website. I don't think any of you have heard of it, but they do something really cool, which probably a lot of other websites also do, but I discovered it through this. When you log into it, suppose you want to send flowers to somebody else, it'll give you a reminder saying that last year, this day, you had ordered flowers for your mom. Would you like to order it? It kind of puts pressure on you, you have to do it again, but trust me, if it helps you remember your mother-in-law's birthday, that's good. That's a really helpful website, okay? So that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? Personalization is so much more important, and it adds a really, really nice touch. The next example that I will share is Etsy. I think Etsy is here in this room. Yeah, I love your product, man. It's great. I keep shopping. You should give me some discount. Seriously. So Etsy, I am one of those people who will look at something, fixate on it, and then I will go online and search for it. And there are exotic stuff that I like to buy. So, and yesterday I was thinking, sitting there, what is that like tapestry rug thingy from Azerbaijan that I really like? And I started playing around with search queries, and within minutes, Etsy told me it's a kilim. You're looking for a kilim. I'm not sure if you know what a kilim is. They're beautiful but expensive. So maybe you should want to go and take a look at it. But the point is, the assistive user technology that you're using to make these things easier for a person makes you loyal. They stay back and they stay with you. Finally, to err is human. So how do you baby-proof your website? Put guardrails in so that the distracted user doesn't fall off, right? So online travel agents do this really, really well. They gray out all the the dates where you shouldn't be booking. You cannot book a return flight before your arrival, right? You cannot do that. But when they did not do that, you will be surprised to see how many people actually ended up doing that, right? No brainer, but we are thinking with half our brain anyways all the time. So that is one thing. Now, when talking of errors, there are two types. Errors also have types, right? One is a slip, the other is a mistake. The one that I described right now is called a slip. A mistake is a little more grave, and that's what I'm going to talk about on the right-hand side. The right-hand side is also from an airline website, and they do what the OTA does really well. So they've grayed out all the dates where you cannot book a flight because of obvious reasons. But the other thing is, if you take a look at it, it also grays out all the days in the next month. And what does that mean for the user? Which means that I cannot book in advance. But that's not the case. You can actually book in advance. So while the first slip is from the side of the user, the second mistake is a design mistake, right? So let's summarize all of this now. So basically, what I'm telling you is, when you're designing a user experience, try and design for a careless person. Your careful design is all about designing for carelessness. It should be helpful, it should be foolproof, and it should be clean. So basically, Marie Kondo your websites. The life-changing, tidying up or something like that. Okay, finally, this is the most important, right? Talking about, and you've heard this from multiple people. Andrew talked about it, Lauren did. Everybody will talk about it, like user. But you have to remember that while you respect the user, you are not the user, right? And why do I say that? I mean, if you look at it, then Sergey Brin and Larry Page, when they were forming the tenets that we must follow as Google, the first thing that they said was respect the user, right? They believe that if you respect the user, everything else just follows. You don't need to do anything else because that's the right thing to do. Today, what most companies do is they put in a lot of effort behind quantitative analytics, right? But none of them do qualitative research that much. You know why? Because it's long, it's painful, and you really need to have guts to listen to it. Sometimes you think that this is the right thing, but sometimes what you actually end up finding out is something that you do not want to hear. But just because you do not want to hear doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So you must test. You must do user research because that's the right thing to do. And the first rule of CRO, or conversion rate optimizer, is celebrate the discovery of your weak points. If you don't know your weak points, you cannot build a strong product. Not ever. So, and an example of this, I wanted to leave you with the last example. Hipmunk. I travel a lot. It's really stressful booking flights. I know it's a first world problem, but whatever. And when I'm booking flights, one day, the geek that I am, I sat and counted how many parameters I had to consider before I booked a flight. Okay? 1, 2, 3. So I counted 8. So which means that I have to optimize across 8 different things before I find my actual flight. Finding a husband is easier online, I would think. Yeah. But Hipmunk listened to us, thankfully. And what they did was they took all the different 8 elements that we use when we are booking a flight and put that into one interface. It's a very tough job. Think about 8 juggling balls, right, on one interface. But they did it. It's clean, it's intuitive, and it is seamless. You probably don't know of this website, but please go and check it out, how they've laid the website out. It's beautiful. So then that is the only reason why they were able to do it, is because they put themselves in the user's shoes, right? So in conclusion, Yeah, how am I doing on time? Okay. So in conclusion, let's do a summary of what we spoke about children. Let's see if you remember. Yeah? First thing, first impressions matter. Did I change the first impression here? When I first started out, what do you thought of me and now? Okay. No? Okay. So first impressions matter. People will stick around with you. They will engage with you because they like you on the first look. Second is, be predictable, but not boring. It's like rom-coms. They're so predictable. You know it's going to be a happy ending, but it's never boring, right? Not for the men, but for the women, or maybe for the men also, I don't know. But rom-coms are like that. Third is designed for distraction or designed for intention. Assume that your user is not going to give you any attention and design for that. It's important. And finally, test, test, and test, and never assume. Which brings me to the final thought that I have to leave you with today. If there's one thing that you need to remember or you take away from this presentation, apart from my useless jokes, is this: the theory of useful design. This is something that Lawrence spoke about, and that's being useful, right? We should aim for being useful to the user. Only if we fulfill the need of the user will they love us. And love is not a one-way street. What do you need to do to make that happen? Utility. You need to provide the users with exactly the features that they need. Hipmunk does that beautifully. And you need to make sure that the experience is, and you need to make sure that the experience is seamless. Because only if you do that, then the user will believe that you actually care about them. You're listening to them. You understand them. And as they say, you have to first understand to be understood. Thank you.